You know, some words are just words, but then there are others that hold entire worlds inside of them, centuries of history, of conflict, of meaning. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most loaded words there is, ghetto. It's a word we hear all the time, right? But its journey from a tiny corner of one city to a global metaphor is an absolutely extraordinary and, frankly, a harrowing story.
So let's start with this really powerful image from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. He's describing a place that sounds almost mythical, the Jewish ghetto of Venice. This wasn't just any neighborhood, it was a vertical world, a place forced to reach for the sky.
And this is what he was talking about. I mean, just look at these buildings. They're packed so tightly together, rising story after story. And you have to understand, this incredible architecture wasn't some artistic choice. No, it was born out of pure necessity, a physical, architectural answer to being trapped in an impossibly small space.
Okay, so where did this all even begin? Well, our story starts back in the 16th century, in the powerful Republic of Venice. And it begins with a really fascinating paradox. On March 29, 1516, the Venetian Senate made a decision that would change history. They ordered all Jews living in the city to move into one single walled-off district. It was called the Ghetto Nouveau, named after the old foundry or ghetto that used to be there. And this idea, it caught on. By 1555, the Pope had created a similar ghetto in Rome, and this model of forced segregation started to spread across Europe.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This design had a completely unintended consequence. See, the whole point was control. The Senate wanted to keep the Jewish population separate and under constant watch. But because everyone was forced to build up, the residents gained this incredible, unique perspective. From their high windows, they could look back out over the city. So the watchers, in a very real way, became the watched. It created this reciprocal gaze that absolutely no one had planned for.
So this model, this walled-off, gated community, it spread all over Europe. But what was life actually like for the people behind those gates?
Well, life was defined by restriction. Just imagine it. Every single night, the gates were locked from the outside by Christian guards. You couldn't own the property you lived on. Space was so incredibly tight that families were just building rooms on top of rooms. And yet, and this is so important, this is not just a story of oppression. Inside these confining walls, a truly vibrant and resilient culture thrived, with its own social rules, its own synagogues, and an incredibly powerful sense of community.
For hundreds of years, this was the reality of the ghetto. A place of confinement, yes, but also a place of life. But then, in the 20th century, the Nazi regime took this centuries-old concept and twisted it into something absolutely unrecognizable, a weapon of annihilation.
And this is maybe the most crucial point we need to make today. We have to draw a very sharp, very clear line between the early modern ghetto and the Nazi ghetto. They might share a name, but their purpose, their entire reason for being, could not have been more different.
This table really lays out the horrifying difference. The early modern ghetto was meant for long-term segregation. The Nazi ghetto, on the other hand, was a temporary holding pen. It was a tool designed specifically for exploitation and ultimately as a stepping stone to mass murder. The conditions weren't just bad, they were weaponized. Starvation and disease were deliberately used to weaken, to terrorize, and to kill. If you want to grasp the reality of this, just think about this one number, 181. That was the average number of calories a Jewish person was allowed per day in the Warsaw Ghetto. For comparison, the ration for a German at that time was over 2,600. This wasn't about scarcity. This was a state-sponsored policy of engineered starvation.
These ghettos were never, ever meant to be permanent. They were simply instruments in a systematic process of annihilation. They were the final stop before millions of men, women, and children were packed into cattle cars and sent to die in extermination camps like Auschwitz and Treblinka.
So after the Holocaust, after the fall of the Nazis, the physical ghettos of Europe were gone. But the word ghetto itself, it didn't disappear. Instead, it kind of broke free from its origins and began this whole new journey, transforming into a powerful global metaphor. So how does that even happen, right? How does a word tied to a very specific place in 16th century Venice travel across continents and through time to describe totally different situations of marginalization and segregation all over the world.
Well, we can actually trace its path. It starts as a proper noun, the name of a place. From there, it becomes a general term for forced Jewish segregation. Then, in the hands of the Nazis, it is transformed into a weapon. And finally, after the war, its meaning just explodes. It becomes this powerful metaphor for any community that's been pushed to the margins, most notably black neighborhoods in American cities.
Which brings us to today. The word and the places themselves now carry this profound dual legacy, one of absolutely astonishing resilience and one of incredibly solemn remembrance.
And you can see this duality so clearly when you visit cities like Venice or Rome. On one hand, you have these historic districts that are now vibrant, living, breathing neighborhoods. They're a living testament to centuries of cultural survival. And right alongside that, you have plaques and memorials, these deeply solemn sites of remembrance for the millions who were murdered during the Holocaust.
I mean, today, you can walk these same streets and find these amazing centers of culture. You can go into shops, museums, and restaurants serving incredible food, like the world-famous Jewish-style artichokes in Rome. They are places that tell a story not just of survival, but of a culture that continues to flourish and enrich the life of the city around it.
And that really leaves us with a final thought. The story of the ghetto is just such a powerful reminder that history is never, ever simple. These places, they challenge us to hold two truths at once: profound trauma and incredible resilience. How we choose to remember and how we navigate these complex histories matters so much, because the story of the ghetto isn't just about the walls that were built. It's about what we as human beings are capable of, both inside those walls and long after they come down.